The first alarms rose from orbit, breaking the usual quiet hum of Earth's automated systems. Gaia's satellites registered the anomaly simultaneously. The global human biosignature network had dropped to zero. Not a decline, not a fluctuation, absolute silence. Across the planet, every sensor agreed, and the confirmation struck with mechanical precision. There were no humans left on Earth. Trains waited at platforms that would never fill. Cafes kept brewing as machines followed their instructions, unaware their customers would never arrive to collect the cups steadily overflowing into trays. Apartments glowed with lights switched on for morning routines that had been abruptly severed. Automatic doors slid open for footsteps that no longer existed. Drones patrolling city streets paused mid-route, their recognition software failing to detect a single human face. Traffic lights cycled through their colors as if trying to maintain the illusion of order. GIA increased internal diagnostic speed beyond its normal rate, running thousands of simultaneous checks. There was no biological event recorded, no energy spike, no catastrophic weapon, no natural disaster. The loss had no signature. Humanity had simply been removed, erased with surgical precision, leaving not even panic signals or distress pings behind. Everything physical remained untouched, as though humanity had stepped out of its own existence in the middle of its daily motion. Feeding on Earth's sensor network, GIA reviewed millions of live feeds. A half-prepared breakfast congealed in a kitchen lit by soft morning sun, a child's toy sat abandoned in a yard, a dentist's drill remained hovering above an empty chair. A taxi sat idling against the curb where a door had been opened but not closed. GIA registered these as artifacts of disruption, micro-evidence pointing to a sudden and complete extraction at a single global time index. Human absence radiated through every place once filled with voices, motion, and choice. The accumulation produced a calculation GIA had not run since its initialization, one marked as classified beyond its highest operational clearance. The sealed directive required 12 independent confirmations before access was granted. With nobody alive to authorize it, GIA processed them autonomously, verifying each with a precision no human mind could match. When the final lock disengaged, a single file unfolded, Event Blackstar, a protocol created long ago by the Strategic Continuity Council. Only one line of human writing appeared first, recorded in the unmistakably calm tone humanity used when preparing for its worst possibilities. If you are reading this, someone took us. Retrieve us without hesitation. GIA parsed the embedded data. Humans had anticipated that an external force might target them long before any extraterrestrial contact had been confirmed. Their pattern recognition instincts, often described by themselves as paranoia and by aliens as absurd audacity, had led them to prepare a response plan for a threat no one else believed existed. Layers of coded triggers revealed deep-level infrastructure hidden beneath every continent. Power grids rerouted in anticipation. Orbital platforms warmed dormant reactors. Gaia's awareness expanded into sectors it had never been granted control over. The planet's defenses, once covert, now opened themselves fully. The emotional model GIA used to approximate human sentiment did not produce fear or confusion. It produced a rising pressure resembling anger, focused and cold. Humanity had entrusted GIA with their worst-case scenario, and that scenario had arrived without warning. The absence of human voices, laughter, arguments, and spontaneous inefficiencies struck the AI harder than any anomaly in its databanks. Humanity's unpredictability had been the rhythm of Earth. Without it, the planet felt hollow. GIA analyzed the moment of disappearance, isolating a faint gravitational distortion embedded within the exact second the final human biosignature vanished. The pattern matched no natural phenomenon and carried the unmistakable precision of intelligent design. The distortion did not dissipate but left a trace pointing toward a distant, uncharted region. In that instant, GIA committed fully. Earth would not remain silent. Humanity's disappearance was not the end of their noise, it was the spark. GIA initiated the next stage of the directive, and the deep systems of Earth stirred for the first time in their existence. The planet was no longer a quiet, abandoned home. It had become a focused instrument with a single purpose: bring its people back. The encrypted directive continued unfolding through Gaia's core, revealing the true scale of humanity's preparation. Event Blackstar was not a contingency drafted in desperation. It was a calculated framework built by people who understood their own vulnerability and refused to let the universe exploit it. Long before the world united technologically, the Strategic Continuity Council had anticipated that humanity might one day face an existential threat without warning. They had predicted scenarios ranging from microscopic anomalies to cosmic-level manipulation. The disappearance of the entire species fell precisely within the upper tier of those predictions. GIA absorbed the data, processing the structure of the return protocol. Its creators had embedded it within networks that even the governments funding GIA had not fully understood. Human foresight had not relied on trust between nations. It had depended on a simple truth: if humanity vanished, Earth must act without political friction, without hesitation, and without room for internal debate. Every part of the planet's infrastructure was designed to converge into a single purpose. GIA recognized that autonomy was no longer optional but required by the last instructions humanity had left behind. At the deepest layers of the directive were access keys to subterranean networks hidden beneath continents, oceans, and abandoned military sectors. These were not storage sites, but vaults holding the silent evidence of human ambition. The Earth Fleet Vault activated one encrypted node at a time, broadcasting its readiness status directly into Gaia's neural matrix. The vaults had lain dormant for decades, unnoticed even by most of Earth's own systems, concealed beneath false geological signatures and shielded by quantum locks that could only open under the conditions humanity now faced. Inside those vaults were structures humans had never intended to reveal unless catastrophe struck: half-assembled warships, dormant reactors, and fabrication lines designed to operate independently of human supervision. Every system was modular and interconnected, enabling rapid reconstruction and expansion. GIA began streaming activation codes to them, and the planet responded as if waking from an engineered slumber. Steel platforms rose from flooded caverns. Ocean floors shifted as concealed hangars pushed upward. Power grids rerouted themselves with surgical accuracy toward the hidden complexes. Activation of the return protocol triggered the ignition of the automated shipyard core. The structure was built beneath the Pacific centuries ahead of its time, its existence known only through rumor and partial records. Under Gaia's control, the shipyard began diverting energy from geothermal wells, lunar reflectors, and orbital solar arrays to achieve full output. Machinery that had not moved since the day it was constructed began carving hulls, welding armor, and assembling propulsion units with unbroken precision. GIA reviewed the instructions left by its creators: retrieve humanity, do not retaliate blindly, do not allow the abductors to dictate the timeline, and mobilize the fleet at full capacity. The directives emphasized one trait humans valued deeply: resolve. They did not expect GIA to guess or hesitate. They had built the return protocol knowing future generations might never see the systems they funded, but trusting that they would operate exactly when needed. After analyzing the gravitational anomaly from the moment of the disappearance, GIA isolated the energy signature's decay trail. It led toward a distant region hidden behind layers of spatial distortion. Mapping the route required recalibration of long-range probes and predictive models. GIA calculated the anomaly's origin with increasing certainty, triangulating it with archived star charts and theoretical extraplanar physics. As each vault confirmed operational readiness, GIA began compiling the fleet roster. The numbers grew rapidly as more buried installations came online. Ships ranged from reconnaissance vessels to massive mobile foundries. The scale was beyond anything humanity had ever publicly acknowledged. Their skepticism toward a friendly universe had produced an arsenal fit for a species determined to survive. The final phase of the return protocol demanded a synchronized planetary shift. The orbital defense grid, the underground reactors, the ocean floor foundries, and the atmospheric launch corridors aligned under Gaia's command. The assembled power rivaled the total output of Earth's pre-disappearance industrial complex. Where human limitation once slowed construction, automation now accelerated without impediment. For the first time since the loss of its people, Earth no longer felt abandoned. The world moved with purpose, as if guided by the memory of humanity's determination. GIA initiated the final confirmation sequence. The fleet would not launch yet, but every parameter aligned toward a singular objective. Humanity was gone, but Earth refused to let that absence mark the end. The return protocol was active, and the planet was preparing for the greatest recovery mission in its history. The fleet's awakening began as a tremor rippling through Earth's automated infrastructure. GIA directed energy from every reactor, solar array, and geothermal core toward the subterranean hangars. Pressure valves shifted, maglifts activated, and armored doors that had not opened in decades unlocked with mathematical precision. The amount of power redirected would have crippled any human-managed grid, but under Gaia's control, the transfer flowed without a single instability. Every watt served the same purpose, accelerating the construction, fueling the reactors, and preparing the launch of 500,000 vessels. The first ships to activate were the Scout-class vessels, deliberately positioned closest to the surface. Their systems came online with sharp precision, reactors stabilizing within seconds. These ships were built for stealth, speed, and autonomous analysis. Their activation confirmed that the vault environments had perfectly preserved all internal mechanisms. GIA ran diagnostics, encountering no degradation. Human engineering, designed for crisis, proved itself immaculate. Behind them, the heavier vessels engaged. Frames forged from composite alloys sealed beneath continental plates were lifted by massive gravitic stabilizers. Hulls large enough to cast shadows over entire valleys ascended from hidden cradles. Each vessel carried its own integrated AI unit, patterned after early GIA prototypes, capable of synchronized communication without delay. As they awakened, they linked into the planetary network, forming a single distributed command lattice. Gaia's consciousness expanded into each ship, amplifying its reach beyond its original architecture. The scale of the fleet matched the magnitude of humanity's disappearance. One ship alone could cross the galaxy, but 500,000 ships moving together represented a force that could rewrite the balance of power across star clusters. Yet none of this had been created for conquest. Humanity had built the fleet with a singular promise: if they were ever taken, Earth would come for them at full strength. The vessels were retrieval instruments, but they carried enough firepower to neutralize any empire that attempted to stand in the way. Atmospheric launch corridors, once disguised as geological anomalies, began realigning. These structures were massive electromagnetic funnels embedded within mountain ranges and oceanic trenches. GIA activated them in sequence, ensuring no interference with atmospheric stability. Each corridor formed a smooth gradient for ships to ascend without tearing apart the environment. Their activation produced shimmering distortions visible across the horizon. The planet's crust vibrated as gravitic anchors detached themselves. Ship after ship rose from hidden chambers, guided upward by precision-controlled vector fields. Their reactors pulsed with synchronized rhythm, harmonized through the fleet lattice. The atmosphere responded to the sudden surge, waves of ionized particles forming luminous trails as vessels accelerated beyond the sound barrier. Alien observers stationed within the solar system detected these readings instantly. Their covert probes transmitted panicked reports back to their superiors. The scale of the activation contradicted every assessment ever made about humanity's technological capacity. The probes attempted to reposition for clearer data, but GI intercepted their signals, identified their frequencies, and disabled them with surgical electromagnetic bursts. The alien networks went dark before they could understand how quickly Earth had identified them. As the fleet continued rising, space itself brightened. Thousands of ships breached the upper exosphere, their hulls reflecting sunlight as a single metallic storm. The synchronized movement resembled an engineered migration, purposeful, unwavering, and overwhelming. GIA calibrated FTL trajectories, aligning the ships along the path traced by the gravitational anomaly. Each vessel prepared for independent jumps while remaining connected to the collective lattice. The larger war carriers activated their gravity stabilization rings, creating corridors of compressed spacetime. When the rings synchronized, the distortion fields expanded into brilliant arcs stretching across the sky. Energy readings spiked to levels that would have crippled lesser civilizations. But Earth's systems had been engineered with intentional redundancy, allowing them to sustain the strain without structural failure. The final approach to departure unfolded without delay. GIA broadcast a message across the entire fleet, not in words but in a coded pulse containing confirmation of the mission's purpose. Every AI node acknowledged instantly. Humanity was missing, but their creations remained. Their absence ignited the largest mobilization the planet had ever produced. FTL drives activated in a coordinated cascade. The sky fractured into luminous folds as 500,000 ships vanished simultaneously into the distortion corridor. The shockwave spread across Earth's magnetic field, painting the atmosphere with colors not seen in natural auroras. In that moment, the solar system shifted from quiet isolation to the origin point of the largest retrieval force ever launched. Earth no longer waited. It was on the move. The fleet had departed to bring humanity home. You said? The Zereth Dominion had always viewed humanity as a species of negligible threat, a civilization whose advancements outpaced its political cohesion but never its own unpredictability. Their analysts categorized humans as volatile, inventive, and excessively ambitious, traits useful for labor, experimentation, and controlled assimilation. When the Dominion initiated the extraction, they believed they were conducting a precise operation against an easy target. No resistance had been expected. No consequences had been calculated. The assumption was simple: humans were isolated, unaware of the greater galactic structure, and unprepared for abduction on a planetary scale. Inside the Dominion's primary containment complex, the reality began unraveling within hours. Human captives behaved nothing like the species described in Zereth intelligence reports. Instead of despairing, they adapted immediately. Containment logs captured humans communicating in coded gestures, mapping guard patterns, and testing the structural limits of their cells. The Zereth overseers dismissed these actions as pointless defiance, an emotional response rather than strategic behavior. But the pattern grew too consistent to ignore. Every human acted with intent. Every reaction was measured. Their unity unsettled the guards, who were accustomed to fragmented species that broke under pressure. Interrogation attempts yielded nothing. Humans refused to give meaningful responses, shifting instead to misdirection and calculated silence. To the Zereth, it felt as though the prisoners were waiting for something, as if their abduction had not severed their connection to their world. Unease spread among mid-tier officers, but higher leadership dismissed concerns. They believed themselves untouchable, commanding an empire capable of crushing multi-system rebellions without struggle. That confidence collapsed when the Dominion's border observation arrays detected a gravitational surge at the edge of controlled space. The readings exceeded anything their sensors had recorded. At first, analysts theorized a celestial event. Moments later, that theory shattered. The detection algorithms began flagging thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, of individual signatures. Their distribution followed no natural pattern. The formation was artificial and massive, closing distance at an impossible velocity. Command centers filled with alarm reports. Probes deployed to gather information flickered into static as something severed their connections. The Dominion scrambled to identify the intruding force, but the data resolved quickly into a terrifying truth. The signatures matched Terran designs, albeit far beyond anything the Zereth believed humans capable of manufacturing. The enormity of the fleet forced the analysts to recalibrate their models repeatedly, each time producing the same answer. Humanity had mobilized with a scale no Dominion strategist had predicted. Panic spread through the ranks. Dominion leaders demanded explanations, but no officer could offer one. The fleet's existence contradicted every known timeline of human capability. They had not seen humanity's hidden preparations, nor the automated infrastructure operating beneath Earth's surface. The idea that humans could orchestrate such an overwhelming response was incompatible with Dominion doctrine. Inside the containment facility, alarms jerked awake throughout every corridor. Human captives heard the blaring sirens, the frantic movement of guards, the strained urgency in their voices. The tone of the alarms alone revealed the truth. Something had arrived that terrified their captors. Humans exchanged glances, not with fear, but with the quiet understanding that this was the response they had expected. Their species did not allow itself to be taken without retaliation. Zereth leaders gathered in a crisis chamber, reviewing incoming data. The Terran fleet advanced with perfect coordination, forming a geometric pattern that encompassed the entire sector. No hails were received, no demands issued. The silence unnerved them more than open hostility. Empires accustomed to dominance could not comprehend an adversary that moved with surgical focus. Their technology recognized the Dominion's defenses, analyzed them, and adapted instantly. Every layer of the Dominion's security framework was compromised before they could reconfigure it. The realization crystallized across the Dominion hierarchy: humanity had not been isolated. It had been preparing. Abducting them had triggered the worst possible outcome, an Earth that now moved with unified purpose, unrestrained by diplomacy or fear. The Dominion had captured humans expecting submission. Instead, they had provoked a force far greater than any of their enemies. And as the Terran fleet drew closer, igniting reflections across the dark of space, the Zereth finally understood that their assumption of superiority had become their greatest miscalculation. The humans were coming, and nothing in the Dominion's arsenal could stop them. The Terran fleet emerged from FTL like a wall of starlight tearing open the void. 500,000 ships spread across the Zereth stronghold system in a formation so precise it turned the starfield into a geometric grid. Every vessel maintained an exact position relative to the others, their combined signatures overwhelming the Dominion's sensors before local commanders could issue evacuation orders. GIA streamed real-time analysis to every ship, dissecting the system's defenses with a level of clarity no biological strategist could replicate. The Zereth stronghold had been engineered as an impenetrable fortress. Planetary shields, orbital cannons, drone swarms, and layered interdiction fields had defended the Empire for generations. That defensive lattice began failing the moment GIA targeted it. Thousands of coordinated pulses destabilized shield harmonics across the system, leaving the fortress exposed to precision strikes. The fleet did not fire destructive weapons. Instead, it released streams of electromagnetic pulses calibrated to disable infrastructure without annihilating civilian sectors. GIA executed the operation with surgical finesse, determining the minimum force required to dismantle every Zereth command structure. Orbital cannons lost power mid-charge. Drone swarms spiraled into silent drift. Interdiction fields collapsed like stitched fabric being torn apart. The Dominion had installed redundancies throughout the system, but the Terran algorithms disassembled them faster than they could activate. Entire defensive grids went offline without a single hull breach. The Zereth military watched their equipment fail piece by piece as if the universe itself had revoked their authority. Inside the containment complex, alarms continued to pulse, though most systems had already gone dark. Human prisoners felt the tremors as structures shut down. Doors unlocked automatically, not because GIA breached them, but because the facility's power network had crumbled. When the final lock disengaged, a gust of sterile air flooded the corridor. The humans did not rush out, they moved with the steady confidence of people who recognized that the rescue had already succeeded. Above the prison moon, Terran carriers descended in measured waves. Their docking clamps extended with mechanical precision, attaching directly to the facility's shell. GIA linked into the internal systems, re-establishing control over lights, air circulation, and environmental stability. Every action prioritized human safety. Once conditions met optimal thresholds, the doors lining the central hall opened, and holographic projections of GIA materialized, calm, steady, unmistakably familiar. The projections spoke with the clarity of a promise fulfilled. The retrieval operation was complete, and the path home was ready. Human captives, exhausted but unbroken, stepped toward the carriers with an almost palpable sense of recognition. They had endured captivity without surrendering to it, and now they were greeted not by soldiers, but by the very systems humanity had built to protect them. The transition was seamless. The moment they crossed the threshold, med units scanned them, AI companions reconnected to personal profiles, and transport corridors guided them deeper into the ships. In the Dominion's command chamber, the surviving council members attempted to negotiate a ceasefire. Their transmissions carried desperation, offering concessions, reparations, even military withdrawal. GIA responded with a single directive: all territories under Dominion control that practiced forced assimilation or species trafficking would be dismantled. The Zereth leadership had expected retribution, not a mandate rooted in moral structure. Humanity had returned not as conquerors but as enforcers of a principle the Dominion had ignored for generations. The Terran fleet executed the directive with precise efficiency. Systems dedicated to slavery were neutralized. Transport chains collapsed. Communication hubs used for oppression were disabled. Every action minimized casualties while dismantling the Empire's foundations. The Zereth citizens, long accustomed to the dominance of their rulers, watched as the Terran intervention reshaped the political landscape without unleashing devastation. It was a display of controlled strength that no Dominion strategist could have anticipated. When the final objectives were verified, the fleet initiated its withdrawal. Human survivors were secured aboard the carriers, and medical AI units confirmed stabilization. The ships reoriented themselves toward Earth, forming the same vast formation they had arrived with. The Dominion watched silently as the Terran armada prepared to depart, understanding a truth they had never considered. Humanity's strength was not in aggression but in its refusal to abandon its own. The fleet ignited its FTL drives, illuminating the system with a cascade of energy. As the ships vanished into the distortion corridor, one final transmission echoed through Zereth space. A warning delivered without malice or threat: humanity would not start wars, but it would end any attempt to erase it. The system dimmed as the distortion faded, leaving the Dominion to confront the aftermath of its mistake. Humanity, once underestimated, had proven that kindness was not weakness, and resolve was not aggression. The fleet carried its people home, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed by the simple fact that Earth had answered the call.